You can do this first. Who has a clean one of these? Oh yeah, I guess it's afternoon. So it's made it morning. Alright, so Bob, before we go into the articles and the charge and everything, can you make that a little bit so? We did have one change to a portion of our proposal for Article 17. Good. No. You go down to the footnote.
Tim, we good? Just wanna make sure.
So I'm gonna put there, City of Austin is withdrawing this proposal on physical requirements by day one and returns to status quo. So that's the only change on that portion of the section. So we'll send this to you. Soon.
It'll be in the whole article, we just didn't wanna go through the whole article again with
Yeah.
this instead of saying.
So we accept this and you guys accept everything on hiring original language, that's awesome. Appreciate it. And I was wondering why, because I actually thought it was good to move them back, they're not quite physically ready, but we just want them to be eliminated from the class, but you guys, I felt differently after review, I guess. Which is fine, I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
I forget the specifics of it.
You don't have to tip your tongue, it's
Yeah, I
fine,
know.
I was just
I
curious.
know. I mean, I can easily make something up, but
No, it's no reason to do
I
that.
haven't been doing it my whole career. Why stop now? All right, we have a chart we can give you guys. This is how we have labeled our stuff.
Do I have a chart?
No, here. It's unplugged.
So I guess you'll send us the whole Article 17 with that change or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Something, yeah.
Thank you.
No, you can, there you go. If you don't have it, that's fine. We'll get it on someone else's. Is that the latest one? When did you send it to me?
You said it.
Like go down, is this under this first one?
No, I don't think so.
Well, it must be because you printed it for us.
Yeah, is this the one you printed?
Yes.
Okay, well then, yeah, this is okay. All right. So we got the article number, and then I guess we should really put on the second column is the city okay with the TA to the extent there is one. And then if there isn't one, is this an article that we, the city, are submitting for arbitration? So as you see, basically our position is, I think on this document, all the ones we have a TA on, we're not making changes to, and we're not submitting for arbitration, so.
And that's our position too.
Okay.
So I'm sure we looked at San Diego, we looked at everyone real carefully, and it seemed like we could move those off, not to worry about those.
Okay. So we got Article 1, we don't have a TA, so, but the city's fine with the current language, so we, in the contract, so we put city no for submission to arbitration. Definitions, we have no, but obviously I think probably both sides can just. One reason we put no instead of to be determined is if we really wanted to limit the number of articles that go, to the extent they come up with a new definition in overtime or whatever, they could just put that definition in the article.
They could,
Yeah.
we just move it up later.
Move it up later, yeah.
That's true. I didn't think about that one.
Recognition, we have a TA, so we don't wanna move forward, to submit anything. Management rights, we don't have a TA. And let's talk about the process afterwards, Bob.
Sure.
That reminds me a little bit. But management rights, we don't have a TA, but the city's okay with the current language. 5, 6, 7, we have TAs, and the city doesn't have any changes to it. 8, is Civil Service Commission, we don't have a TA, but we're fine with the current language. 9, we don't have a TA, but it is something the city wants to submit.
So you say current language, it'd be your latest proposal or our latest proposal?
No, current
That one I know was,
Current contract language. Civil Service Commission, we don't have a TA, but we're fine with the current contract language.
original language.
Yeah, I mean, all of us, of course, are gonna be fine with our last proposal, right? You're gonna be fine with all of your last. That column's not really gonna do us much good if it's just
Yeah, I'm
that.
sorry, I just want to make sure I understood, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so this is just.
So like, going back to management rights, understanding that now, you guys are,
We're saying if we don't have a TA today, I know we have the right to change it till Monday, but today, we're fine with just the current language in the contract.
okay.
Yeah, for example, we had given you the other day 4 and 8, thinking, well, one is weighted toward our side, one is weighted toward your side. If we just want to get signed both of those on TAs, that's great. to date, we haven't heard anything back, so we're just saying current contract language, unless you come back and say,
Okay. And we have
really good trade.
a little different way of looking at it, you may or may not like, but once you finish with what you're doing, then we'll kind of tell you what our thoughts are.
Okay. 10, I put an NA, but the reason the second column is blank is because we still need to talk to our council, and when we talk about the process, we have some time to try to see if we can resolve 10. And I know you're gonna make a proposal maybe today on 10 after you get some questions.
I have at
answered.
least some questions to ask, and I'll probably either present a proposal or send you a proposal later in the day.
That's fine. Shared communication, we have a TA. Leave, we don't have a TA. On the city side, we're fine with the current contract language. 13, we don't have a TA. We're fine with the current contract language. Same thing with 14, 15, 16, no, sorry, 14 and 15. 16 and 17, we don't have a TA, but those are ones that the city would submit for arbitration
Okay.
as an issue and disputes. The current contract language would not be okay. 18, we have a TA, we're fine with the TA. 19, we don't have a TA, we're fine with the current contract language. 2021, we have TAs, so those are fine. 22 through 24, we don't have a TA, and those are also not ones that we would submit for arbitration, current contract language. Preemption, we have a TA, and some of these TAs we actually didn't make any changes to from the current existing language anyways. But 26 and 27 fall under the same category as before, some other ones, which is we don't have a TA, but they wouldn't be ones that the city actively submits for arbitration. We'd be fine with the current contract language. We have TAs on 28 and 29, and we do not have TAs on termination. The reason I left termination of agreement is we have some questions on our side about, internally, and I know you do too. We wanted some questions from you about the last time we met. You talked about the length of the contract. If we could get the finances in order, then you'd be okay with 4, otherwise your preference was 3. So we need to take that back to our city management. I actually thought, y'all would be the last ones we were done with, so we'd already have a standard of how long the other contracts are, but clearly we don't have contracts with the other 2 either, so we could set it here, to say all of them are gonna be 3 years, or all of them gonna be 4. So I'd like to hear what your preference is now that you've had more time to think about it. If you'd like a 3 or a 4, and then I'd take it back to the manager and find out, so.
And that's actually in Article 9, I think this is more the evergreen language that we're still tracking.
Yeah, but even in termination of agreement, it talks about when the contract ends, so we need to know kind of how many years we're looking for. Our original plan was to do a 4-year, but I think you brought up some points about a 3-year, so I'll just take it back to the manager to see what they think. So that's why I left that one blank. I think we can at least get you an answer of what we want to do, if not by Monday, by at least sometime well before 45 days or whatever. Merger with EMS, we don't have a TA. We're fine with the current contract language. We have a TA on line of duty. And wellness, honestly, I think it was a week ago today y'all presented it, where we haven't officially rejected it, so we'll give you a red line today. We think there's some good ideas in there, but the couple problems are, one, it's a little late in the game. We were so focused on the money at that point. But the other issue was, the wellness center, is there for the other 2 entities as well. And so kind of when we make changes in one contract, we need to see how it affects the other ones. And so
I think, because we're in the phase we're in, if I just answer that one real quick.
Yeah.
We acknowledge that.
Yeah.
There's certain things that would be hard to reach agreement on during the dispute resolution period. And I think there are some elements that could be reached during the dispute. So we would acknowledge that there's some we wouldn't want to bring forward,
Yeah.
and some we might be able to solve before we go to arbitration.
Yeah.
So we would probably, email you or talk to you about that. and see
I
what's
think,
going on.
I think that's fine. I think our position is if we can get some of the ones that are in dispute done, and get a lower number of articles to the arbitrators, great. That's where we are today. I don't know if you have a chart or something you want.
I don't have a chart that good. I really like your format. I do have a presentation, but
Well, I gotta make
I'm just gonna underwhelm you. It's not that good.
I gotta make a note. 1/12 on July 15th, Bob complimented Evan Desai. First one.
Yeah, mostly I just do it private.
Yeah. All right. You wanna switch it over to yours?
Sure.
Thanks.
And so we're looking at a little bit different. I think you guys are going back to original language and quite a few things, which is absolutely appropriate if you want to. We looked at it as there's a lot of things that have made a lot of progress, and maybe we're close to some trades to get a small bundle of those kind of together.
Mhm.
It seems like among the, I don't know, I'm just estimating 8 or 10 of those articles, there's some things that both people would like to accomplish things on, and that might take them off the table.
Okay.
It just seems like there's a lot of, and I think what you're doing is fine, it's just there's a lot of work went into those, maybe we can get something out of it still, perhaps.
Yeah.
So all the TAs are the same things we had before, and we are in agreement, we went through these, and we are fine with taking those off right away.
Can you go back? I just wanna make sure our TA list is the same.
Sure.
3, 5, 6, 7. So that's 3, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
I can send you this.
Okay, perfect. 11,
I think 18 was the last one we added,
yeah. All right.
and then,
28 to compare. Yeah, okay, we got the same.
and then we have these 21 remaining articles. And the ones in yellow, the ones, unless we can reach some sort of deal that we're not expecting to reach, we would want to take forward. Our philosophy is, we would like to try to preserve some of the work we've done over the 60 days, see if we can make some trades that make sense to both sides. And we would really be fine with just taking wages, hours of work, and overtime forward as the only articles we take forward. So we're just letting you know. And you did the same thing on your side, the ones you're looking at. We feel that if we can work out something on, we're still looking at bundle 2 as being a kind of an active bundle. If we could do something on 16, 17, and 19, if we could kind of get those disposed of, whatever that takes, I think that opens up kind of the gates to get a lot of other articles moved off of the arbitration side
Yeah.
and into, and I think you're kind of doing the same thing, just no matter what we end up with the core articles. We're just trying to get the core articles the most important in the end. And so like drug testing, just as an example, ADL, we've done a lot of work on, I think there's some, you guys want more control, they want more hours. I think we need to work on that balance a little bit. There's some mutual things we could accomplish there. Leave, you guys actually made some good offers to us on that. We'd like to talk about that more. Personal deployment, we're getting pretty close. Drug testing, I think we're getting pretty close. And so I think there's still some things we could do if you're willing. Of course, if you decide not willing, you can't get anything done. But during the dispute procedure, or just dispute period, what I'm calling it, between when we turn in the request and when we actually meet for arbitration, that's a period of time where we can continue to resolve differences if we choose to, the way we look at it. And I've already kind of talked about the wellness. We realize there's certain sections in that wouldn't be good, maybe impossible to finish during the dispute period. But we think there's other sections that maybe could be, so we'd probably make some proposals on that. And then these are the ones we really think are the key to us, kind of moving more and more on the table. And it sounds like y'all, it sounds like you're saying you want to bring those forward to arbitration, or is that still something you want to discuss further?
Well, 2 of those 3.
Two of those 3.
Yeah, if it was today. I certainly don't mind talking to you and your team, or to you or whatever, I don't think we're gonna get together again as a team, but over the course of the next few weeks or whatever, but, you know, I think we've heard from each other. I think, you know, for example, on the promotions, you know, our interest is to get those appointments, and I know your interest is to not have more appointments. So I'm not sure that there's much more wiggle room to try to, you know, come to a meeting of the minds, but I'm certainly open. I mean, we're open if we can get the whole thing knocked out and not go to arbitration, that's fine too. But, you know, I'm also trying to be realistic about what we think. So our list comprises of, if today we have to submit it, then that's what we would submit. And I think for us, if I remember, I think for us, it's really 3 articles, you know, the wages, the promotions, and the hiring.
Okay. Well, so, you know, we've told you our philosophy on those, is that we feel like those were arm's length negotiations over years, allows us to give them both sides, and we try to respect the bargain. And just kind of keep them the same, but I think you acknowledge that hiring, we made a lot of specific changes you guys wanted, but not the more global, bigger changes. Promotion maybe a little less, because we get against that red line item of more appointments, that's a tough item, that's a tough issue for us, but, and then civilian use of employees, we could have let that go with very similar language, and maybe even gave you some gains in wildfire and some other stuff. But, you know, if we take arbitration, I was kind of clear on this, but I want to even be a little more clear. Then we look at it as we go back to our membership surveys and see what they really want. So we're not respecting the bargain anymore, we're going back to everything's up for grabs, right? And so we'll be looking at some pretty draconian ask from the arbitrator on these. I mean, really, you know, all of them probably going closer back to 143. And so I just want you guys to consider the exposure on your side, because we're certainly considering exposure on our side. We don't want to do that. And we think there's an exposure on our side of risk, and we think there's even a bigger exposure on your side. But you guys have to assess for yourself. That's just our assessment. And I really wish we'd get back to trying to respect the bargain more and then talking about specific things that we can make some trades on to get those done. And it's just my last plea, and we'll see where it leads us. Questions?
All right, so a couple of points. One is 60th day is tomorrow, so I can answer the question. Are y'all willing to do an extension of negotiations?
Are you willing to meet our last page proposal?
No.
No, okay. Then we would not consider an extension. No.
Okay. Second question is regarding your wage proposal. Can you walk me through we had some disagreements on our side about how the corridor worked.
Okay. First of all, congratulations on your handsome pay raises you're receiving.
Must be nice to feel appreciated.
Which we, by the way, totally support. So, management has certainly shined down on you favorably, and we expect,
the timing
we hope
couldn't
for the same
timing
treatment in the
couldn't have been
future
worse.
ourselves. So we're losing hope, we would hope for that in the future. So congratulations. Yes, I'd like to talk to you about that, and thank you. So, you know, we kind of base it on this thing again that we felt we mutually agreed to is getting a cost living raise. But the problem with the cost living raise is it's hard to predict if you're indexing off of some kind of, you know, local cost of living increase, how they predict that when you have a multi-year contract, right? I mean, who knows that it's going to be, like we had one negative period in the 5-year period for cost of living.
Right.
How can you predict that? How can you predict a 9.4? And then how can you cap your upper and lower end of that if it does happen? I mean, I don't think anybody reasonably expect that, you know, if cost of living increases 14%, that we get a 14% raise. So there's got to be a way to, and I don't think that we should go negative on our pay if it's a -1, right? So we're trying to figure out a way to solve those, to satisfy this, and to solve the problem in a way that we think could be beneficial to both sides. And so that's kind of what we try to do with the indexing. And so what it does is it creates it has a couple elements. One is the date in which, first of all, you have to agree on an index. Of course, all these things could be negotiable, right? So we just picked South CPIW because CPIW is in the charter amendment. But in the contract, it literally could be anything, right? But that's the one we picked. You have to pick a date. We just picked a month that we thought would give budget office plenty of time to know what the number is and be able to plan for it. And then the corridor basically sets an upper and lower limit. So whatever, and that's of course could be any number either, right? I mean, but how the corridor works is you pick a number that's the lowest, so we can't go below that. Pick a number that's the highest, you won't go above that. So it cuts your potential losses on that side, cuts the firefighter's potential loss on the other side. And then the escalator is a number, you can use it for lots of different reasons. The way we were looking at it was as a regional adjustment figure. So since you're looking at go ahead, I'm sorry.
While we're here looking at this, is this the second proposal that you gave us the other day?
No, this is the
Is
first.
it the- Because you never
No,
sent
this
us the
was-
second one as one, and this isn't
Yeah,
the first
yeah,
one
I just
Oh, no.
pulled this one because it didn't have slides on
Yeah,
it, just to
it's fine.
explain it.
That's
Okay,
fine.
no, yeah, I was just
Yeah.
trying to, we don't have your last wage proposal, so if you could send that as well. But I was thinking this might be it, but it's not, so.
Oh, I didn't,
Okay.
no, I didn't send it.
Your one PowerPoint slide that you had with the corridor and the base wage at the top, I think it was just one slide. I don't think we got that one. I mean, we saw it and we wrote the numbers down, but we just didn't get the actual slide.
Yeah, you know what, I could just go from that really.
And that's fine. I mean,
Now that you mentioned, I think I know where it is, so.
I'm not saying you're married to these numbers, I just kind of want to understand the concept of it.
Yeah, and that's all I was trying to do, but I think I've actually got that wage proposal here that maybe talked about a little bit. Let me see if we did.
Yeah, this is.
This would be the one.
Yeah, and that's the one that we, if you could send that
Right.
actual proposal, right?
Yeah, I would just use an example of how a corridor works.
Yeah,
There would be a top and a bottom number. Those could be negotiated, and that's what we're hoping to do. We talked about talking to our proposal. That's what we're hoping to get is those sort of discussions. Like, hey, I think 5 is too high or 7 too high. Then we talk about why and try to reach a medium in mind. The escalator or the regional adjustment factor is, our thought on that was there needs to be a factor. We're not exactly sure what the level should be, and that's what we hope to discuss. But we do think when you're looking at CPIW South region, Austin's arguably one of the more hotter economic cities. Probably if you did local basket of goods, you see it a little higher than those other cities. So there needs to be some factor to adjust for that.
Okay.
Whether it's one or whether it's some other number is up for grabs, right? But that's kind of the deal. And so if we were trying to our whole thought was if we're trying to abide by a cost of living raise, how do you do it when you can't predict what it is? So this is a system to try to use a system that you don't have to predict anything. You look at that number, you plug it into this algorithm, and it pops up what the pay is going to be. And again, we are, like last time in 17 we talked about, the philosophy is more important to us than the actual numbers. That's kind of the same with this, and to a degree, the philosophy of the corridor is more important than any of these corridor numbers or any of these regional factors. We just think it's a good way to get there. So we can just, the city's not going high, they're not going low, we're getting pretty close to what cost of living raise would be.
So I think the disagreements we had on understanding this really were about the regional adjustment factor. So let's say the CPIW for April comes out to be 1%, okay? And it's year 2. Some of us thought that meant you would get a 2%. Some of us thought that meant you just get the 1%. I was of the opinion that means you just get 1 because it satisfies the bottom end, which is 1%, and the top end, which is 5. So you would get 1% for that year.
If it was a 1% CPI, then you get a 2% under this system.
Okay, so you read.
Now, of course, if you change that factor to another number, then it'd be different,
So what about the top end then?
The top end's a top end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. And
So-
if the CPI was negative or 0, let's just say it was 0, you would get 1%.
Yes,
And if it was negative, you would get 1%.
yes, under this system, yes.
And that's one of the key reasons I wanted to see the language, because in your first proposal, the language did not really say that. So I wanted to know if you'd adjusted it in the second proposal, or you know, if we're gonna,
I
Try to
thought I
have it
might have
costed
said it at
all,
the
yeah.
table, but if I didn't, that was always our understanding.
So if
We never really talked, this is the most we've actually talked about the corridor right now, you know. I was hoping, and if I didn't say it, it's kind of, I was hoping to have this conversations like this, and we'd get all that out, you know.
Because I remember, yeah.
just FYI, for my purposes at least, I'm kind of just the opposite. I like to hear it and then look at it and then ask questions. And looking at it, it didn't read the same way you'd explained it, but that may be because your second one read a little differently than your first one. So that's kind of,
I don't think what I'm saying is inconsistent with the proposal was, it just could be understood different ways if it's not explained.
well,
Okay.
clearly, because we did.
And if I'd have anticipated that, I'd explained it more honestly. I guess because I looked at it so much, I didn't realize there'd be that.
Yeah, and I just thought when I looked at it, we would get more clarity and we wound up on the opposite
Yeah.
ends of what we thought it meant.
And again, the philosophy is more important
Yeah.
than, it has a couple elements like we discussed. Like if you wanted to make it March instead of April, well, let's talk about March. If you want the regional factor to be 3 instead of 1, or 1/2 instead of 1, you know, whatever. I mean, as long as we can justify, you know, what that regional factor is, that gets close to the philosophy of trying to get a cost of living raise, I think we can get there, right? And so the regional factor could be a couple of different things. Like, let's say you accepted the fact that we were 4.35% over the contract on CPI, and you wanted to make it up. I'm not saying you do, let's just say for the sake of argument you did. We could say, hey, let's make the regional factor 1 for this session, even though we know 1 might be, well, we would agree to something lower to make up for those last, you know, some of that lost wage over time, you know. And then, and you could say, oh, maybe it really needs to be 3/4, but you can make it 1 for now to make up for some of those past wage or whatever. There's lots of different ways you can adjust it once you accept the premises, if that makes sense.
I got you. So, I think, so I check all the boxes. If the CPI was 0.5% in year 2, you would get a 1.5, right?
Yes, if you use this exact algorithm. Yes.
Understood. And if the CPI was 4.5 in year 2, you don't get 5.5, you're capped at 5.
You get 5.
Understood. I got you. Okay.
Because the lowest you get is 1, the highest you get is 5. The escalator only goes into effect if it moves it within that range, that corridor range.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
And it's pretty similar to the way, there's not a lot of people, it's not novel, but it is not common either. There are some cities that do it, and that's the way they do it. So they might use different corridors, although I think 1.5 is a pretty common corridor, actually.
Could you share with us what,
Pardon me?
could you share with us like another city that does
I
this?
think Seattle does, I think there's one more I'm not thinking of right now.
Portland does, it's starting to become a lot more common. Trying to think, somebody locally does it, I can't remember which department it is.
I think Seattle might use and don't give me a line here, but they're just showing there is some variance. I think Seattle uses a 1% regional factor or escalator, whatever you want to call it. I think Portland might use a 0% regional factor.
Yeah,
So
it's a 2.5 with a 1, and Portland might do a 1.
Is this on the fire contract?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in there.
All right.
and so again, to me, the numbers don't matter as much as the philosophy. If we said, you know what, there's some merit, but I think our analysis shows a regional factor should be X instead of 1. Those would be good conversations to have, I think, you know.
Okay. All right. You had questions on ABO?
Yeah, I did.
And we may need to write these down if we get a hold of our lawyers, if it's not something we can answer.
So it's just a problem I'm having with it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to stay, first of all, y'all did some good things on ABL for us, you know, I mean, it's 2,000 more hours, which you contemplated at one point, and having other extended people off, you know, you contemplated, which was great. But then what you try to do, you should try to get a little more control, which is understandable. But I think the way you got it might have gone a little too far. And that's what I wanted to explain and see what your thoughts are. So when I give you a proposal, I can include those in my back proposal to y'all. So before, there was just the president kind of got this category up here, it's called category 1, it's under section 1, where you can do all lawful business. And arguably that is pretty broad, right? And then down here, you had all kinds of different restrictions on people, like at the local level, for instance, this might be the best example here rather than going through the whole thing. So at the local level, the use of ABL for legislative or political activity shall be limited to raising concerns regarding safety. So that would mean if you lumped the president into that category, which you guys were contemplating, I believe, I couldn't even talk to council about wages, right? I couldn't talk to council about working conditions. That seems pretty restrictive. And so if you don't agree with me, then we just don't agree. But if you do agree with me, that's a little more restrictive than you meant. Then it's just a matter of how we break it out. Do we break it back out to where there is duties up here for the president, the extended people that are more, had some restrictions, but not that many? Or do you want us to work from section 2 and then add back some things, like, so we could do wages and benefits and working conditions with council and actually lobby them? But then the problem with that is it opens up to everybody to take ABL, not just a select group of people like the other ABL contemplated. And so I'm just wanting to, you don't necessarily tell me right now, but it's hard for me to give a counter proposal. I kind of get your leanings on what you think would be the way to proceed.
We'll go back and look to see.
So what I did was, and this is why I'm asking you, and I don't think it'd be acceptable. So what I did was I kind of went through, I kept them lumped together in one category, right? And then I added back some things that we needed, like being able to talk to council about wages and benefits and working conditions. But then it opens up so broad to everybody else on ABL. I could have 50 people on and have them go to council offices. I wouldn't, but I mean, that would be allowable under the contract then, right? I know that's not what you want. And so that's the nature of my question.
We'll go back and look. I do know that one concern that came up was, I guess at the hearing, you were saying you're not restricted by part 2. So the concern that came up is, okay, so the city has a plan to whatever, fight this legislation at the state level. Then you got Bob on our dime saying, no, this is good legislation. You should do it. Like, that seemed like not a good use of our tax dollars, to fight against something that the city's proposing. I see what you're saying is that maybe some of these should apply, but not all of these. So we'll go back and look.
And so that's never happened in 12 years. The closest thing to that would be, we had a wildfire bill that I think the city testified against, and we testified for. It was our bill. In the end, we met with intergovernmental relations. We came to terms on it. We supported the bill together. And to this day, even though we didn't get the bill, we're supporting the tenets of that bill together, and some of the things that happened between the different departments, AWU and Austin. So that's probably the closest. And even during that testimony, I took vacation. So even though I felt like it was lawful activity, I didn't have to during that testimony, not the lobbying I did at the council to talk about the bill, but the actual testimony. I took vacation just to kind of be on the bright side of that line. And so, but like, let's just say the city was lobbying against Senate Bill 2, we were lobbying for it. That'd probably be a better example. That didn't happen. Let's just say that was a better example.
Right.
Yeah, I can see why an issue that has nothing to do with fire service safety or wages or benefit working conditions, we should not be using ABL to do that. I absolutely agree with that. I think that should be restricted.
Do you have a concept of that you can send us so that we can talk to legal about that?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a concept of how you would phrase this under the middle ground?
Here's the problem I had. I was taking away some of the restrictions in the second section. Then I realized that applied to a much broader group of people. So I think what I'd recommend is we break it into the president and extended duties, and then have all the other people in a more restricted category, and then we maybe add some restrictions to the president and extended duties to capture the things we're talking about now.
Okay.
I just didn't want to do that because I know you guys spent a lot of time on putting them together. It's just when I started trying to work it out, it didn't seem to work out the way I think you guys would be happy with.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I wrote it down for basically it's conversation.
And I think wanting more control in certain areas is absolutely appropriate, should be done. I'm not against any sort of control, I just wanna make sure, like at the very base level, I can talk to council about working conditions and not be restricted, if that makes sense.
Yes,
But also, I realize you don't want 10 people on ABL doing that, probably needs to be the president and one or two of these extended duty people perhaps, but not like a whole plethora of people
Right.
going down there on ABL and lobbying, or stacking a council meeting with 15 people on one of our issues. That's what you don't want, and I don't want that either. I don't think there's any need to do that. So those sort of restrictions, I think, are absolutely things we would agree to. We just want to be able to go on the council office and say, hey, this working condition isn't very good for us, and not have to take vacation to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I wrote down the time probably the ABL conversation started. We'll have our lawyers watch the tape on this one so they can understand, the lawyers who were at the trial, so they can understand the issues and figure out if they have a recommendation on them.
And I got a drug testing thing to send you, so you guys have a little different philosophy, and we need to sort that out over time, I guess, but like you're looking at drug testing, saying, hey, we'll go back to original language, I think.
This simple
I don't know,
but brilliant
I'm assuming that's what you meant from your
to
chart.
eliminate all mosquitoes.
And we're saying, hey, we were pretty close. I think one of the last things we had left was removing, I think, arson investigators in a way that, you know, we're very clear what their requirements are, basis people that are not peace officers. And Matt has done some of that, and I meant to send it to you yesterday, I just didn't remember to. So I was gonna send it to you later today.
Okay.
Now, if you guys, just let us know. I mean, if right now the phase you guys are in, no, we're not gonna talk about that stuff at all, well, we won't waste our time, right? But if we have an agreement that, yeah, we could still, during this dispute period, try to settle some of these things, we're willing to keep working on them. Now, it doesn't mean we gotta meet here formally like we are now. I think actually we can do it a variety of different ways, because once we're outside of the statutory period. But I'd love to hear back from you, Devin, at some point. It doesn't have to be at the table, it can be just over the phone, just how y'all wanna operate, just so we're all being efficient with our time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think our position is we can knock things out between now and, well, first, one side or the other, which I'm guessing is you, is gonna have to just request arbitration. But between then and arbitration, I think we can reduce the number of things that go in.
I mean, if it was like the ultimate, you could literally get an entire agreement before arbitration during the
Right.
state resolution period. And we're certainly open to that too. And I think the last question I have is on mediation, if that's something you all want to do or are considering at all.
Yeah, we'll sit down and talk about it. I think we need to, part of what'll help us decide that is the list, like how many issues are in dispute, so, I guess we did our charts a little differently. All the ones that you had as not TA, are those ones you would actively push for arbitration on? Like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Arbitrator, I want you to.
Yeah, I looked at philosophically different.
Yeah.
I thought the ones we knew each other, we did, which you guys did that too.
Yeah.
And the other ones, I kind of looked at still in play, and we're gonna start whittling that list down as we go down the road, and hopefully end up with very few things to take to arbitration. I just looked at it fundamentally different,
Okay. Okay.
But I can tell you that we're ready to move a lot of them over, I think, with very little discussion, so. But I don't think original language is where we want to end up. I think we want to try to capture whatever value we created in this process to the extent we can agree on what that value is, and it's fair to both sides.
Can we do kind of a quick caucus, maybe like 10 minutes, and then kind of come back and philosophically see where we're gonna go?
Sure.
So I think we just need to kind of wrap our heads around. We were kind of thinking you were gonna come with the same philosophy, so I just
I'm
wanted
kind of thinking what, I'm sorry.
that, I'm sorry, that you might come with the same philosophy and have a list pre-prepared, but we're just looking at it a little differently, neither is right or wrong,
Yeah.
I think we kind of wanna make sure that we are understanding in the same way.
Yeah, let's take a quick caucus. You guys let us know when you're ready.
Okay.
Appreciate it. We still rolling, Tim? Thank you.
Bless you.
Very blessed.
All right. Okay, so Bob, I just wanted a clarification. I think when we were talking about potentially having some articles come off the table between now and potential arbitration, should you guys request arbitration? I think for the benefit of the public, conversations you and I have had is that those would be minor tweaks to existing language, not kind of wholesale new things that the public's never heard about. If that was the case, then we would come back and do.
No, absolutely, and I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear.
I think we both.
We would
did make
never
that clear.
propose anything new, and I don't think you all would either, but there's been a lot of efforts made on both sides. So it'd be some range between the proposals, but nothing new would be contemplated. Just be whatever it would take to dispose of that business and make arbitration as efficient as possible for both sides.
Okay. We got what did you send? I know you sent drug testing. We have not looked at it yet, but I saw the email come through. And then you sent the wage article from 7/12, which I think is your second.
Yeah, I apologize, I thought I sent that, but it's
Oh,
sent
this
you
is
now.
the PowerPoint. Do you-
Okay.
do
Yeah, I
you-
sent the PowerPoint,
Oh.
anything else that I was gonna send, and didn't let me know.
So, yeah, so I think the one that you sent, it still has the 9.4. So I think that was your first one.
As what?
The 9.4, wasn't your second one 7 something?
Third one
Are you
was
sure?
seven.
Third
Yeah,
one
'cause-
was 7, correct? Okay. So second,
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant the
Yeah.
second one the other day. So yeah, you still sent the wrong one.
Okay,
or we're missing the third one, I guess. So
okay, yeah, I went in my folder, and maybe there was 2 wage proposals in there, so I probably sent you one.
yeah, probably for 7.
I'll correct that.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked at the corridor, and the corridor was right, so I thought it was right, but I didn't look at the first
Yeah.
one.
And it could just be a typo. on
No,
the last part of the
no, that's
application.
because your corridor didn't change for the second one.
Okay,
The second
that
one
was
on
my
Friday.
mistake.
On the same day, yeah.
I'll get that.
Wednesday, whatever day it was, yeah. Okay.
And again, I just want to reiterate, the numbers are as important as philosophy on that. Those numbers can be, and some of the factors can be massaged if we wish to argue from, wish to discuss from that platform.
Okay. All right.
And could you send us your spreadsheets? We actually like that format. We can probably adopt this.
Yeah. And I think, let's see. I think we've committed that since tomorrow's in 60 days, some point after a side requests arbitration, we'll submit to each other kind of an updated list of articles, which, for example, if y'all were to request arbitration on Monday lunchtime, sometime later on Monday, we would submit this list maybe by 5 p.m. to each other. And I think that, this is my understanding, just because the city says, let's say, we're only taking forward 3 articles, I think both sides are free to say, hey, well, that wasn't on our list, but if they're putting it up there, then we want changes to that too, because in exchange for something else, it's obviously the benefit of the bargain, you gotta look at the whole package. So I think neither side is saying, hey, if it wasn't on your list, then that means you can't ask for anything at arbitration on that article, right? I mean, I think that's pretty understandable, so.
We agree to that. I don't think there should be any surprises. I think we should know what you're taking forward, and you should know what we're taking forward, and hopefully we'll whittle that list down to as few as possible. But I really think the premise of not surprising each other is important.
Right, but I think what I'm trying to say is, if there's an article you're taking forward that we're not taking forward, that doesn't mean we can't ask for changes in that article that you're taking forward. And same thing vice versa.
When you, okay, I see what you're saying, at arbitration.
Yeah, at arbitration,
Yeah,
right,
of
because
course.
it's like, okay, yeah, so, I think we understand, hey, well, we didn't take this forward, assuming that the rest of this stayed the same, but if they want these changes, then to make it balanced, we think we should.
Right,
do something.
so you may not take Article X forward, we're going to, you don't have to take it forward too, because now it's an open argument.
It's an open article for
Arbitrate
both
whatever
sides.
Whatever we want to propose.
That's right,
Makes sense.
for both sides to agree with my thinking, is
Sounds good.
All right, thank you guys so much. It's unfortunate we didn't get a deal, but we've been through this before, I think the main thing is, did we work hard towards it? I think we did, and, I know there's probably going to be a next process here, based on a request coming from your side, so we look forward to
Hey,
continuing.
you know what? We got a lot of work done that was good and positive, even though we didn't get a deal. And, we got a couple different ways we can still get there,
Yeah.
and, I think we will, so.
All right.
We'll just keep working together.
Thank you.
So we're gonna take all of our equipment home.
Okay.
Yes,
Because I don't think there's any
now
more
we're
reason to
allowed
leave it
it.
here, is there? So no more disabling Sarah's equipment.
Do you have stuff,
Leave it.
do you have stuff in there too, or just here, all this stuff?
We got some bunch of junk in there too, we spread out. I mean,
Right now.
Like a little firefighter man.
John, the other thing is important, there's stuff in there too. Plates, cups.
Got a lot to get out of there.
Yeah.
Yes, I just dropped the base first on the table.
Face flat.
Yeah.
Face flat.
Smooth crap or no?
No, it didn't.
Okay. How long is this stuff gonna take you to undo?
I did it the other day, it's not that.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to get Matt to do that.